Hello and welcome to today's NetAlly webcast. Today's webcast is all about the launch of our new next generation EtherScope nXG portable network expert and its Wi-Fi 6 and 6E capabilities. I'm Dan Klimke. I'm the Director of Product Marketing here at NetAlly, and I will be your host for our meeting today. And also joining me today is James Kokoska, our CTO, Chief Technology Officer, and Julio Petrovitch, our Product Manager for our wireless solutions. On today's agenda, first off, James is going to talk about the many technology changes and complexities entailed in Wi-Fi 6 and the new 6 gigahertz band. We'll talk about the new EtherScope nXG, obviously, and go over the new and enhanced Wi-Fi 6 and 6E features. We'll have a live demonstration if the demo gods are with us today. And then for the questions that we might not be able to get to along the way, we'll have a Q&A session at the end. And speaking of questions, do feel free to use the questions tab in your GoToWebinar user interface. If we can get through if we can get those questions answered right away through the chat box, we'll do that, or perhaps interrupt our current speaker and cover the question if it's topical. Otherwise, we'll try to get to those at the end. Okay, one other thing, there are a couple of attachments available in the GoToWebinar user interface. I think there's a product flyer and also an upgrade flyer. We'll talk about the upgrade program later on in the presentation, but existing owners of EtherScope nXG can get a discount on moving up to the new technology. All right, with that, into the logistics, let's get into the meat of the presentation. I'm going to turn it over to James, and James will cover some of the new technologies involved with Wi-Fi 6. James, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Dan, and thanks everybody for joining us. You know, it's kind of a crazy time in Wi-Fi and kind of networking in general, right? Because usually, you know, we see maybe a Wi-Fi technology rollout or security change, or, you know, we haven't seen changes in the spectrum in 20 years, but there's just a lot going on here, right? So it starts with Wi-Fi 6 and all the technologies that it brings into play. And, you know, of course, mostly around 1024 QAM and OFDMA, but a lot of other things going on. And then on top of that, you've got all these new security modes, WPA3, personal, enterprise, enhanced, open. There's even some transition mode lingering around out there. And so a lot of new authentication mechanisms. And then in addition to all that is the opening up of the 6 gig band and the 59 new 20 megahertz channels there. And just on one hand, it's a greenfield. On the other hand, you know, we're already seeing a lot of diversity in how AP vendors and people are deploying that. So next slide, please. You know, the channel plan stuff is very complicated. Depending on where you're joining us from today, right? We've got all the regional stuff and what countries have either deployed the entire 1200 megahertz and which have only allowed Uni-5, and then you've got these new channel widths, you know, 160 megahertz. In particular, 80 megahertz, we're seeing, and while there's all these additional new channels, you know, we're seeing APs coming out already, you know, out of the box running 160 megahertz wide. And then there's this additional set of requirements that are there, and maybe not 100% baked because it's still a little uncertain what happens in 20 and 40 megahertz. But you've got these preferred scanning channels, right? And it's not the lowest channel in the bonded channel group, but actually the second channel up, as you can see down here in the lower right. But it doesn't necessarily apply to 40 megahertz or 20 megahertz plans. So it's just kind of interesting to see all that come out and how different vendors are are adopting PSC, and I think there's, we're already seeing there's just already a fair amount of OBSS, right, because of the wider channels and where the primary channel is relative to that you just see overlap. So even though it's this beautiful wide open greenfield spectrum, there's already a lot of issues and complexities in how it's going to get deployed. So next slide, please.
Will do. I just want to provide a little bit of a nod and a thank you to the Wireless LAN Professionals organization, who is the source of this information. And if you're not familiar with Wireless LAN Professionals, advise that you look them up.
Yes, yeah. It's kind of interesting. So you have all these new channels that have come into play, and it's brought along a lot of additional complexity and mechanisms. Particularly, they don't want traditional clients scanning all of these 59 new channels. So you have these preferred scanning channels that cuts the scope down to a quarter of that. However, they don't even want clients necessarily going into the 6 gig band unless they believe that there's an AP there. So there's a mechanism called reduced neighbor reports. You see kind of on the upper right here that is basically in the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz beacons are now carrying information that same AP is running up in the 6 gig band. And then to kind of try to get ahead of beacon overhead in the 6 gig band, the concept of multi-BSSID has been introduced. And so here you can see on the bottom screen, you can see that a beacon in the 6 gig band is actually conveying 3 different BSSIDs that it's supporting rather than 3 separate beacons. So just a lot going on here in terms of new mechanisms, and for us, it's we've really put a fair amount of effort into trying to decode these and provide educational clarity to all these new things that are going on. So next slide, please. On top of all that Wi-Fi stuff, right? Wi-Fi 6 gigahertz spectrum, new authentication mechanisms, and all these, reduced neighbor reports, multi-BSSID. How are you gonna, how are channel plans gonna work themselves out, and how's it actually going to be deployed in the 6 gig band? Preferred scanning channels, all that complexity. We finally kind of have the killer app for PoE and multi-gig and base T, in particular 2.5G base T. It's been there for quite a few years, but it just really its primary target application is APs. So and technologies and features that we introduced a year ago, such as Lambert, allow you to validate that your new APs can deploy across your existing installed Cat5e cabling. And so, because there's a lot of confusion there about, do I need to recertify? Do I need to pull new cable? And the answer is generally no. But we have a tool within this same EtherScope that's doing all this Wi-Fi stuff to validate that. And then same thing with PoE. Higher power PoE has existed, but really hasn't been heavily deployed. Maybe in some digital signage or some higher power security cameras, pan, tilt, zoom sort of stuff. But by and large, the deployment of Wi-Fi 6 APs is bringing on truly the application of higher power PoE. And here again, we have a feature called True Power PoE loading, where it's like plugging a light bulb in, and we measure the loaded and unloaded voltage. So you can understand, again, if your physical media, it's the wired side of the APs as well as the Wi-Fi side of the APs that we try to cover off with this new EtherScope. So next slide. So, as we've been, we've been out in beta for a while and talked to a fair number of customers about their deployments and what they're doing. And boy, there's just a lot of pain points. Everything from what we just mentioned, will the infrastructure support this? Are my switches provisioned right? Just even how do they keep up with all this technology? How do they validate the provisioning? There's even a set of complexities around what's your SSID plan going to be, right? Are you going to use a single SSID and it'll just run in all 3 bands? Are you going to keep 2.4 and 5 on one SSID and carve out a specialty SSID for 6 gig? Or are you going to have separate SSIDs for each band? And so how do you validate that? How do you know you can connect on all of those? How do you enable your team to troubleshoot issues? How do you understand what clients are on 6 gig? In particular, how do when you're rolling this out, the vast majority of our customers support multiple sites, and it can be across an entire country in some cases, across a metro, across a state, but how are you going to deploy this across all these remote sites and have any capability to troubleshoot those without hopping on a plane? Also some concern about 6 gig path loss. How's it going to work reflection-wise? I need a new survey. How do I verify coverage? What my RSSIs and SNRs are in the 6 gig band as I move around. In particular, if you're sort of replacing your APs in place, what is the reduction in coverage? And even some concern about vendors and just needing a second set of eyes on your deployment. And then last, being able to understand the performance in terms of connection rates and throughput. And so a lot of pain points out there that we're trying to address today with this introduction.
Well, great, James. Thanks for the overview of some of the technical changes, and it certainly does seem daunting in many respects. This is a lot of new technology, whereas the previous iterations of Wi-Fi tended to be enhancements to existing technologies. A lot of new things here in Wi-Fi 6 and the 6 gigahertz band. And it's to that point why NetAlly has announced the availability of really the industry's first handheld Wi-Fi 6 and 6E test instrument and analyzer with the latest model of the EtherScope nXG. So it's fully updated with new tri-band hardware and the software to drive that in the instrument. And as James pointed out, the key tasks with respect to the new technology is the ability to validate your network provisioning to ensure connectivity. Again, as James mentioned, across all of the bands, utilizing 6E using Wi-Fi 6 technology, and testing the performance of those new technologies and protocols and the new frequencies. We also have launched a new mobile spectrum analyzer. This is an optional adapter for the EtherScope. This is for detecting interference in the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz bands, and future roadmap for visibility of the 6 gigahertz band too. That'll come. So that you can see the impact of interference on the wireless network's overall performance, and also the ability to see non-Wi-Fi interference sources. So that's what we've announced. For those of you who are not familiar with EtherScope, just a real quick overview of what EtherScope is. Essentially, it's a multi-technology, all-in-one handheld network analyzer. 1 gig to 10 gig, copper and fiber. On the fiber side, multi-mode, single mode, doesn't matter what kind of fiber. It's compliant SFP, can utilize any number of fiber optic connectors. And now, of course, native Wi-Fi 6 and 6 gigahertz band support. The idea about this dual environment analyzer, wired and Wi-Fi, enables you to quickly test, validate, troubleshoot, gives you visibility on both sides of an access point. The 10 gig capability means you can capture packets at up to full line rate 10 gig, as well as performance testing. James mentioned the Lambert media qualification app, utilizing either 2 EtherScopes or an EtherScope and a LinkRunner 10G, one of our other products in the product line. You can qualify whether your cable plant can support multi-gig speeds, so that perhaps you may not need to upgrade your cable plant for your Wi-Fi 6 and 6E deployment. The surveys are a key thing, and we'll talk about that in more detail. Now you've got a handheld instrument that can conduct Wi-Fi site surveys, and in fact, because we have a Bluetooth BLE radio in the product as well, You can do Bluetooth surveys as well using our feature called AirMapper. And Julio is going to chat about that in just a little bit. So let's see, one more slide. So yeah, as an introduction to what Julio is going to cover, the three core elements that we'll be talking about with respect to Wi-Fi 6 and 6E enhancements have to do with connectivity testing, monitoring and analysis, and those site surveys. So without further ado, Julio, I'm going to let you take over from here and talk about each one of these three areas and the key feature sets for each one.
Well, thank you very much, Dan. And hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So as Dan mentioned, as part of this new Wi-Fi radio or Wi-Fi 6, 6E radio that we've introduced on the EtherScope, a lot of options or enhancements have been done on the software itself. And the first part that has been enhanced is the connectivity test. So thanks to the new Wi-Fi radio, now you'll be given the option, of course, to actually connect to a Wi-Fi 6 or 6E network using a natively. So you'll connect at actual Wi-Fi 6 data rates. Besides that, of course, you will now be able to connect to any BSSIDs on the 6 gigahertz band. You'll be able to use the option to authenticate with WPA3 or OWE. Notice that this applies not only to the 6 gigahertz band where it's required, but also on the 5 gigahertz and 2.4 gigahertz bands. So if you're using WPA3 or OWE, you should be able, or we will be able, to connect or authenticate using those technologies. Not only that, you'll also be able to now see more detailed information about or validate key infrastructure services and servers, not only on the 2.4 and 5 gig, but also on the 6 gigahertz band. So the main idea is that now you can actually connect to a Wi-Fi 6E network and validate performance using an actual Wi-Fi 6 radio. And of course, the support for the 6 gigahertz. And we'll see this with more detail during the live demo, which will be a lot more interesting. We can see some examples here and then how now you get back visibility on all the SSIDs or BSSIDs on the 2.4, 5, 6 gig, and how you can connect to, for example, on the right side here, and BSSID that's on the 6 gigahertz band. You can also see the channels. One thing to highlight here is that, for example, channel 133, you see that E at the end. We added that suffix to basically differentiate between the 5 gigahertz channels and the 6 gigahertz channels, because they use the same nomenclature or numbering. So that will make it easier. And then, of course, all the other tests that you guys are normally used to on the EtherScope, like validating that you can get an IP address, can I see the DNS server, the gateway, and other targets are now also available. Also, something very super important, when you look at the connection rates, you'll notice that now you're actually connecting to on the higher rates provided by Wi-Fi 6. Next. Then, of course, besides being able to natively connect or perform a connection test on a Wi-Fi 6 or 6E network, we've also made improvements on the monitoring and analysis side of things. And there's multiple enhancements here that, again, we'll show you live on the demo. But one of the things, for example, is the channels map or the overlap screen. Basically now, besides being able to see the Wi-Fi and non-Wi-Fi utilization on the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz bands, now you'll also see a new option called Map 6E that we can see here on the screen, on the channel map there, that basically will show you the utilization for both Wi-Fi and non-Wi-Fi on the 6 gigahertz band channels too. Besides that, you'll also be able to see retry percentage, number of access points, and number of clients per channel on the 6 gigahertz band. When it comes to overlap, which is the little example we have here, you'll also be able to see any access points working on the 6 gigahertz band. and basically which channels they're working on and how they're overlapping with other devices on the network. Besides that, of course, we'll now provide, or you'll see more information when it comes to device details themselves. So when you take a look at a specific, let's say, BSID, you'll be able to see what types of Wi-Fi it supports, for example, Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 5, etc. You'll be able to see details about the type of authentication, so WPA3 personal or enterprise or OWE plus the older technologies. You'll be able to see the actual connection rates that's using for Wi-Fi 6, channels being used on all three bands. So you'll be able to see what channel is being used on the 2.4, what channel on the 5 gigahertz, what channel on the 6 gigahertz, how many clients are connected. So basically, not only will you get access to all the information you had in the past, but now you have all that extra information or details that cover the 6 gigahertz band information too. Of course, the air quality test has been also enhanced. So when you run an auto test and you select the air quality option, not only will you be able to see utilization, co-channel, adjacent channel interference information for the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz bands, you'll also now be able to see everything for the 6 gigahertz band too. And James, oops, one more thing before we move on. And James also talked a little about this, multi-BSSIDs, and we'll show you an example of this too. But basically, one of the new features on Wi-Fi 6 and the 6 gigahertz band is that with a single beacon, a Wi-Fi 6 APs on the 6 gigahertz band can announce or provide information regarding multiple BSSIDs on that same beacon. So instead of having to transmit multiple beacon frames, one per SSID or BSSID, now you have a single beacon frame that includes information about multiple BSSIDs. And that's something also that will be captured and highlighted as part of these new enhancements. And of course, reduce neighbor reports, which James also highlighted. And we'll show you an example of how that looks like. I will also be available. So when you look at, for example, information on an access point on the 2.4 or 5 gigahertz band, if they are announcing information or showing information about BSIDs available in the 6 gigahertz, you'll get that visibility too, even if you haven't scanned the 6 gigahertz band yet. Okay, moving on. Okie doke. And then, of course, as Dan mentioned, another part that has been enhanced as part of this is the AirMapper app. I'm sure many of you are aware of the AirMapper app, but just in case, AirMapper is basically a site survey app. So it allows you to perform a site survey using your EtherScope nXG. And now, thank you to the new Wi-Fi radio, or thanks to the new Wi-Fi radio, not only can you perform a site survey on the 2.4, 5 gigahertz band, but now you can also perform a site survey, active or passive, on the 6 gigahertz band too, which basically allows you to validate coverage, identify performance and configuration issues, and do all that using your visual heat maps for troubleshooting. So you can see an example here on the upper right. Basically, you have now the option of selecting the 2.4 channels, 5 gigahertz channels, or the channels on the 6 gigahertz band too. So pretty cool. And if I'm not mistaken, one of the only Wi-Fi 6E capable site survey solutions on the market. So try it out if you haven't. Next.
And to that point, Julio, a question that can't come in about doing predictive modeling.
Mm-hmm.
We do have some predictive modeling capabilities using AirMagnet, AirMagnet Survey PRO, and capabilities with respect to the 6 gigahertz band are on the roadmap. But to confirm that the data that's collected from the EtherScope can be imported into, or AirMapper site survey data can be imported into the AirMagnet Survey PRO application.
Great question.
Details about that?
Yeah, sure. Great question. So as part of the, as you mentioned, as part of the next AirMagnet release, we will be adding 6 gigahertz support on the AirMagnet software. Still, as for now at least, you will continue to be able to import 2.45 gigahertz band information. Don't throw away the 6 gigahertz information though, because as part of the next release that will be coming out in a couple, very soon, let's say that way. You will also be able to import that 6 gigahertz information. Also, as Dan mentioned, very soon we will also be announcing or introducing the option of designing a 6 gigahertz network too. But yes. Okie doke. Then moving on here, before we can jump into the demo. So another big enhancement, and this is a request we've had for a while now, is that we've introduced the option of performing spectrum analysis using the EtherScope. So now not only can you use the EtherScope for your wire testing, for your Wi-Fi testing, for Wi-Fi site surveys, now you don't need to carry a separate spectrum analyzer anymore. With the new NXT 1000 adapter, which is that little guy you can see here on the upper right, basically you can just plug that in to the EtherScope and use the new Spectrum app to perform actual spectrum analysis on the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz bands. And hey, we're continue to add more functionality on this new app. But as for the first version, where you'll see the real-time spectrum graph, you'll also have the ability of looking at the spectrum density graph, a spectrogram, or commonly called the waterfall. All those will be available. Another thing that's important is that this new NXT 1000 adapter or the Spectrum app will be available not only on the new model of the EtherScope with the Wi-Fi 6 6E radio, but also on the existing or older models, what we call the EXG 200. So even if you have an older EtherScope, you do have the option of using the Spectrum app if you want. And of course, if you have one of the newer Wi-Fi 6 6E capable EtherScopes, you will be able to also use the new spectrum analysis option. So no need to carry around another spectrum analyzer anymore. You have everything on one single device. Next. Then another thing besides everything that we've introduced on the EtherScope and we'll be showing you in a few moments on the demo, you may have heard that on April 25th, we had a new Link Live release, version 5.17. And even though at the time we kept it a little hidden, reality is that if you've been using Link Live and you have one of the new EtherScopes, the 6 gigahertz band support, band channel support, was already added. So you can go right now if you wanted to and take your, let's say, Wi-Fi 6E site survey and upload it to Link Live, and you will be able to generate your heat maps. Or you could just run a connection test on a BSID on the 60 gigahertz band right now, and you can upload that to Link Live, and all that information will show up in there. So Link Live is ready to go with 6 gigahertz support, and also anything that's 6E related. Then another enhancement on this Link Live release that you may have heard about, and this is a request we've had for some time now, is the ability of sharing or reusing report templates for the AirMapper app. So initially, for those of you familiar with AirMapper on Link Live, you had the option of creating your own reports, but that custom template could only be used for that specific project or one project. Now you can create a report template and reuse that same template on multiple AirMapper projects. So no need to recreate the wheel or recreate your reports again and again. Now you can create one template and use it as many times as you want. Another part that's pretty cool and that you should try out, and I hope we'll have time to show you today also during the demo, is that we've added the Insights Engine intelligence to the Wi-Fi analysis section on Link Live. So for those of you that have been using AirMapper on Link Live, you may know about the Insights Engine. Basically, it is used to compare your site survey data against a set of pass-fail thresholds, and then it gives you a quick pass or fail. So instead of manually having to analyze all the heat maps, it basically does the analysis for you. It makes it a little quicker, and it helps you identify problem areas on the floor plan automatically. So now it's also available for the Wi-Fi analysis section, and it will basically automatically identify what we like to call offending BSSIDs. And we'll show you an example of how that looks like, but it's pretty cool. And there's a lot more that, as if we have time during the demo today, we'll also highlight. Next. And then, of course, a couple of weeks ago, you may have also heard that we released the latest version of the AirMagnet Survey PRO software, going back to the question we had earlier, version 10.5. And there's a few things here. One, we've added or enhanced the reporting engine on the multi-floor planner. And now you have the option of customizing the reports on the multi-floor planner, or you have a lot more customization options in there. Another thing that we announced is that after years of hard labor, we are announcing, last year we announced the end of support for the legacy single floor planner. So, and it has been removed on this release. So this is part of our, how do I call it, work to enhance and modernize the AirMagnet planner. So now we have a single planning module on the tool that basically simplifies the way you design your network. And as mentioned a few moments ago, we will be very soon also announcing the 6 gigahertz support. Notice that we already support Wi-Fi 6 on the AirMagnet planner, so that's already there. Also, as part of this new enhancement that we've been doing, we increased the system requirements for the AirMagnet software. So not super crazy or anything crazy like that. You won't need like a super powerful PC or anything like that. But we've increased them to basically accommodate for enhancements that you will be seeing very soon. And of course, for those familiar with AirMagnet, notice that these enhancements do apply to all versions of the product. So Survey Pro, the planner by itself, Survey Express, which is the survey by itself, or even our rental option, Survey on Demand. If you don't know what that is, you should check it out on NetAlly.com. Okie doke, I think then that's the last slide I've got, but just in case.
It is time to switch over to the demonstration. So James, I'm going to pass control of the website, the pitch over to you. Hang on just one moment. All right, I think you've got control now. Got it, we can see it just fine. Can't hear you if you're talking.
All right, there we go.
There we go, that's it, gotcha.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about sort of auto test first and in general settings. So some additions here to show are that in the general settings, when you now go into the Wi-Fi bands, we've added 6 gig, and we decided to break it out because of all the regionality stuff and into Uni 5, the lower half, and then the upper half. And so and we highlight the frequencies and channels involved there. So you can sort of pick what you want included in your scanning. Given that I'm now in 6 gig, I can come in and say, hey, I want to scan all the channels, or I want to just scan the preferred scanning channels in the 80 megahertz, or I just want to do the 160 megahertz. Let me turn that off. There we go. And so here you can see that just basically you're skipping every 8 channels. And so, but just kind of convenience ways of allowing you to set these things up. And then additionally, we added the ability to control the offset in any of the bands, any signal strength adjustments you want to do to try to closer match something that you're trying to emulate. So that's the scanning stuff. One of the nice things, we've had this notion of we have profiles. A profile is something where you say, hey, I want to connect to this SSID, this BSSID, and then it's everything layer 1 through 7, right? It's everything about the connection, the channel, the gateway AP, and then even into services, DHCP, DNS, your gateway router, even lightweight performance stuff, like you can FTP down a file here, or verify that you can pull a full URL. But so we've had this so that's a profile. Now within the profiles, and this is a profile group here, so I'm basically forcing this is if I had a scheme where I said I'm going to have a single SSID for all 6 bands or all 3 bands, and I'm just going to let the client figure it out, then this would sort of emulate that. And so, but in a lot of cases, you're going to want to validate, right? With a client, you're not going to have any control over what bands it goes to. And if you're standing in a certain location, you're like, hey, I want to understand my performance and connectivity right here on all 3 bands. Then we've added the ability within the settings to force the band. So in the Wi-Fi connections, kind of in the detailed section, you can basically say, hey, I'm connecting to this SSID, but I only want to connect at 6 gig as opposed to 5 gig or 2.4, or you can leave it up to us as a client to decide how to connect. And in fact, that's what you see here in this set of auto tests that I ran. I've connected in 2.4 on channel 11 at 144 megabits. I've connected at on channel 100, same SSID, 1.1 gig on channel 100, and I've also connected on 105E. There's our suffix, right, to avoid confusion with. It's kind of interesting that they didn't offset the channel numbers to start at 200 or such, because you can tell the difference between 2.4 and 5 gig based on the channel number. You can't in 6 gig, right? So that'll add to the confusion. So our decoder ring there is this E suffix, but you can see that I connected to the same SSID as in the other 2 bands, but here I've forced us to connect on 6 gig. So I'm on channel 105. You can see I got the higher data rates, and then lastly I've connected on I said I didn't force the band, and I let our client decide which band to connect on, and it migrated to the higher channels. And I tell you what, it's the Wild West out there. I mean, I'm seeing issues where I can't get an AX210 to connect in 6 gig in the same scenario. It's just there's a lot of stuff going on between all the new APs and clients, kind of the Wild West. So that gives you a sense of sort of the auto test capabilities and what we've added there. Of course, anything I do in auto test is pushed to link live, and so I can see here the same set of tests. Here I am on channel 11, same SSID. Here I am on channel 100. Here I am in channel 105. You can see that I only have the AX 802.11 type available, and then here's my NE, which also drove into 105. So support for it not only on the product, but also in Link Live. Let me flip to a different. So this guy's sort of our connection auto test view. Let me just flip to a different guy here. So a lot of the action is in the, get that out of the way, pull that over there. Okay, so and then of course a lot of change within the Wi-Fi app itself. We've had our traditional sort of channel scanning here and all that. We've added to that additionally MAP6E. I was actually I could not get my AX210 literally to connect at 6 gig for some reason this morning. And so it's going to show throughput utilization but you can kind of see AP and client counts here, and then a lot of changes to the overlap map, right? We've always had the, let me come over here. Of course, we've always had the 2.4. Come to, there we go. So this is 2.4 gig band, and then you can just kind of go through the bands here, sort of based on uni and all that. Now I get into the 6 gig band, and I can see I've got 1 AP here and none in that section, and then I've got 2 APs here. Kind of interesting, right? And this is sort of what we spoke to, which is you know, while these guys share the same 160 megahertz wide swatch, they're not on the same primary channel, right? So there's going to be some higher potential here for adjacent channel interference. But that's the overlap map. Then moving down here, let's take a look at an AP, right? So we roll everything up into one AP. So if I pick on this guy, let's say, here's an AP that's running on 640 and 101E and running with 5 different BSSIDs, 4 different SSIDs, and you can see here that I can go in here to the BSSIDs, and we've kind of got, you know, and it's just to kind of speak to the complexity here, right? We only had one icon for a BSSID, right? But now there's 5 icons to represent what a BSSID is. So here I can see on channel 6 that the beacon there, a little bit of complexity here, right? Rather than a single line, we also show a dash line here, but no worries, we do the decoding here for you, right? So this beacon in the 6 gig band is actually sending out a reduced neighbor report. It's transmitting it. And so we've added new capability here. So if I wanted to see what he was telling me about 6 gig, I could come in here and say, hey, this guy with his WPA2 and 6 on channel 6 is also telling me that he's living up in channel 101E with these 3 different SSIDs. There's OWE as the authentication versus WPA3. Of course, we support enterprise too. And so this is our reduced neighbor report. And then you can navigate to any of these. So I'm going to come in here and let's say I want to take a look at this. Well, I just went from looking at a 6 gig AP, seeing the data reduced neighbor report, picking the one of its 6 gig neighbor reports, hit it. Now this gets us into the, so now I'm looking at this guy, 160 megahertz wide. Here's the channels he's occupying, and you can see AX, and you can see that that we've added also a new capability here and a new icon, right? This particular BSSID is also a multi-BSSID and transmitted. And so there's a single beacon that's coming out that's also including 2 other SSIDs, right, as opposed to 3 separate beacons. So now I'm going to drill on these, and here you can see our nomenclature, right? This is transmitted means solid, non-transmitted means is dashed here. And so I can come in here and look at this guy, for example, and he's a multi-BSSID non-transmitted, and of course same channel, same radio, but kind of gives you a sense of how you'll be able to validate that your multi-BSSID provisioning is working right, and that your reduced neighbor reports are working correctly, and how it all interrelates, right? This is really a big decoder ring, right? I started in 2.4, I saw a reduced neighbor report, I followed it through to a 6 gig BSSID, but also happened to be carrying 2 other non-transmitted BSSIDs in this multi-BSSID. So it gives you some sense of the complexity and the depth and the features that we had to add here. So that's there. Let's see, what else can I show you? Let's see, so overlap map, and then of course changes. Oh, one last thing here. Let me pop over here. Here's sort of our spectrum analyzer running along here at. Should probably try to get that out of the way. running along here, looking at the 2.4 gig band. Of course, we support sort of the density graph, a real-time FFT, as well as a waterfall. So all started with 3 types there. More will be added there, but we thought those were the 3 fundamental types that people need to look at. So that's kind of a glimpse of the spectrum in action there. Then, of course, support in Link Live, right? Let me pop up here. Oh, let me show one other thing here. It's interesting, right? Because as we've been deploying these 6 gig APs, let me click on this guy. There we go. We've been seeing already, it's kind of interesting. Like yesterday, we deployed 3 new enterprise 6E APs in our office. And already we're seeing the radio resource management changing channels, even in the 6 gig space, which you'd think would be clean spectrum, right? And so one of the things that the EtherScope does behind the scenes, amongst other automatic problem detections, is it looks out for this stuff. And so so we're sitting here looking at this AP, but we've also reported a problem here, right? And if I go into the problem, you can see that this guy has changed channels, and we'll show you the channel changes that any BSSID is going through, right? And I've seen this constantly in the 2.4 gig band. You go into almost any public venue and you see the radio resource management just gone wild, and switching from 1 to 6 to 11 to and then every AP is thrashing other AP. So it was kind of interesting that just even as we deployed in this new would-be greenfield, that we were already seeing channel changes going on. The last thing I'll add is we've added a bunch of new sorts and capabilities here. I guess I should filter. You're looking at all these BSSIDs here, right? We've got complete support then to come in here and say, so now you can see I've got 14 SSIDs and 3 bands. I can say, hey, I only want to look at 6 gig, right? We see the SSID count drop to 6, right? Because these are dynamic filters. We see the channel count drop. We only have 1 channel width represented. We have the 802.11 types are down here. AX, of course, if I had all these, I could see all the types. There. If I pick AX, I can see that AX is running in let's see here. Let me take these off. I can see that AX is running. That actually there was some AX running in the 2.4 gig band. And then of course at any time you can come back here, and I've filtered out the number of APs. And then lastly I should show security types. We've also added the new security types. So I want AX rather than having, and this is, imagine you're looking at hundreds of BSSIDs and trying to sort out, right? These progressive filters are your key. AX, I've got 25 BSSIDs running AX, but how many are running OWE? Well, now I'm down to 3 of the 28, right? So it just shows you how easy it is to kind of filter, and how we've added support in our filtering for the new band, for the new 802.11 types, and for the new security types. Just makes it easy to kind of slice and dice through. And then additionally, we of course have our sorts, right? And there's a lot of power between this sort of filter to limit the set, and then sort to look at what you want of interest here. So let me come in here, and I'll come back out here, and let me just clear the filters here. And but I'll show you some of the new sorts we've added here too, right? Which is you can sort on, of course, the 802.11 type will bubble the AX to the top, or there's some lowly old N running around here, right? And so we're sorting based on types. We can sort based on channel widths, and you can see all this 160 megahertz stuff, and then there's 80s and 40s 20s, right? It's just a really nice way because you can say, I want to look at this SSID, or I want to look in this band. Is everything running the same, right? To validate that all your APs are running the same plan. And then lastly, we've been more and more embracing QBSS, so the ability to sort by, which is the AP's view of the world, right? And let's see here. I don't know why my station counts are a little low there. I should have connected some stuff to my Resi stuff doesn't do QBSS, so, but you see it more in enterprise things. So, but here you can see you can sort. You can walk into a site and then just immediately sort. Okay, what's the busiest BSS ID based on the number of clients that are connected to it, or its utilization. So, it gives you some sense of that. And then let's see, let's pick up a couple last things here, and then we'll wrap this. This is a very simple survey, but it'll make the point, right? The same filters that we have that you just saw in the product are always, it's the same on Link Live, right? So I can come in here and I can say, hey, I want to see my same progressive filtering here, right? 13 SSIDs. I want to just look in the 6 gig band. Now I'm down to 4. I want to only look at 6 gig band running OWE or WPA3, right? And so same sort of capabilities. Once you as you do that, then of course you can click and filter, and here you can see we have the channel information, and then all the same stuff you're used to looking at. Channel widths. Let me take my filter off there. And so sorting on channel widths or utilizations or interferers, and anything that you want to dial into there, right? So full 6 gig support there, and then lastly, our Insights has added the ability to let me pull it up a little bit so I can touch it. Has added the ability to also monitor 6 gig stuff. And so here I said, hey, 2.4 gig, anything that's not 20 megahertz, I want that flagged. And Insights is really powerful, right? Because we are literally looking across everything across the entire survey, and then just picking out those bad actors for you. And so, you've got control over, what's a bad actor. So here, and I just happen to say, hey, I don't want any 160 megahertz. I should only have 80 megahertz in my channel plan. Well, it doesn't mean you can control the neighbors or even, folks showing up, popping up hotspots and such. So here we picked that up in red, and then. But Insights is our ability to basically come in and just slice through all the information. I mean, how much beacon overhead did we see on different channels, right? And things that would take you an hour to do are just automated here in terms of any set of thresholds that you want. Let me come back in here. I'll just quickly show the control panel, right? In Insights, you can set coverage limits, SNR limits, interference limits, 2.4 if you're going to allow overlapping channels or not. We just saw flagged at 40 megahertz, 2.4 AP. What security types are allowed? Let's say you don't want any open, right? I just happen to choose web here. 5 gig, 6 gig, same thing. I'm allowing these. I want to be flagged on channel changes. I don't want these security types to exist. And then here's my minimum basic rate limits. So it gives you a sense of what Insights does. So across the board, right? In the product, in auto test connectivity testing, in Wi-Fi analysis, scanning and monitoring, in site survey using AirMapper, all the way through Link Live, auto test results, Wi-Fi analysis, surveys, even our topology mapping, which I don't have a tab for at the moment, and such. Even our even some of this channel change stuff, right? It's all there now, and so you've got a complete capability to validate connectivity, to monitor and understand your RF along with what your neighbors are doing to it, and be able to understand the kind of coverage and capacity and performance of these new using AirMapper as a survey tool. So that's it on the demo, Dan. Hand it back to you.
Okay, great. Thank you, James. It's very useful to see everything that the product can do. And we've been having a ton of questions come in. I've tried to get to them. There's a couple here, though, that I do want to ask about. There were some questions about additional authentication protocols. Let's see if I can find those questions. TEEP, are we compatible with that? Do we utilize that? EAP TLS, maybe you could speak to those protocols.
Yes, I believe we support all those, right? And certainly all the TLS stuff, all the certificates, and being able to use those for authentication, of course, in enterprise. So yeah, should be support for anything you're running into.
Great. I'll tell you what, while I move on and cover the upgrade offer, I'll have you and Julio take a quick look at all the other questions and get prepped for the Q&A session that will start in just a minute or two. So I do want to mention, while James and Julio are checking over the questions, we do have an upgrade program for our existing customers. When we first came out with the EtherScope a little over 2 years ago now, we knew that the Wi-Fi 6 capability was on our roadmap and would be out there, and we had made a promise that there would be an upgrade path. The good news is, yes, there's a program up to 40% off. This is not a hardware upgrade per se, like this is not a trade in your unit or send your unit in to be changed. This is a discount off of a brand new unit that you can add to your test instrument arsenal. That means you're going to be able to equip more staff, you're going to get the new technology, and this additional new EtherScope, we call this the 300 model, will work with your EtherScope 200 for tasks like performance testing. That's so you can do site-to-site performance testing, check out your service provider SLAs and all that, but also for that Lambert media qualification test. You can find a webinar on that we did last year on the NetAlly website. That, as James mentioned, is the ability to send frames over your existing cable plant to see what kind of traffic it will support. We're having customers who are finding that even though they may have some legacy Cat5 cabling, that would not perhaps certify to a higher standard, they're still able to carry at least gig, and in many cases, 2.5 gig traffic on that legacy cable plant. So we're actually able to save our customers some money at upgrading their infrastructure by validating the cable plant. At any rate, that's another added benefit of having a second EtherScope in your tool set. So go to netally.com/nxg-upgrade and you can get all of the details there. All right, so now we are come to the question part. Julio or James, if you've seen the questions, maybe we could have you answer any that I've missed or amplify ones that I may not have done a thorough job on.
Sure, if you want, what I'll do, I'll just read the questions. Most of them, that are the ones that are left, I think apply more to James' expertise. So James, I will read the first one. And this one is from Keith. He's asking, is there documentation on how your client chooses which AP to join when you let it run wild and not lock on band?
Not really. Well, certainly not from the radio vendor. We're using a Qualcomm TCA or QCA. It's a 2x2 tri-band radio. We have some ability to force it to a band in auto mode. To be honest with you, we're still trying to characterize exactly how it decides what it decides on, and based on it's kind of interesting, right? There's certainly in the times we've had visibility into this past, there's actually almost a scoring rubric of what it connects to. It's going to be typical to have a lower RSSI in 6 gig than 2.4 gig or 5 gig, right? So you're not going to connect there. So there's obviously some bias towards the higher technologies whenever possible. So our observation so far has been that it will connect in the highest band possible, or it'll basically connect to the highest TX rate that it can achieve.
Here's another question that actually I think it came up a couple of times. And James, since you're sharing Link Live, could you show how the remote connectivity works, if that's possible with your account there on Link Live?
Sure. Let's see here. Let me share back in. Let's see. Where is sharing? I lost my little shared tab here. Hang on. Not the GoToWebinar expert here. There. Let's see. Should have kept the share. Sharing. There we go. Okay, hang on. Sharing. There we go. Show screen. Yeah. So let me.
While you're getting that queued up, then, so the capability here is that through the Link Live cloud service, you can actually connect remotely to an EtherScope in the field. And the common use model is that you've got, as the questioner asked, you've got remote hands out at a remote site. They may not have the capability or knowledge to solve a particular problem. They need the help of an expert who is located remotely. You can simply use Link Live to create a connection to that remote device and effectively use it as if you're standing in front of that tool. So as James is showing here, in Link Live, I can see it just fine, James.
Okay, all right, good. Yeah, so Link Live is our repository for everything that happens on the unit, right? And so you can see we have results. These are auto test results typically, but it could be Lambert results, performance test results, any sort of episodic results, if you will. Unit management, which is where I'll go back in there in a second. Files, which is really a mishmash of everything. This is where captures go. Of course, we now can do 6 gig captures and Wi-Fi 6 decoding, right? So that's all there. But you can see kind of a mix of in fact, here's a PCAP here I'd grabbed, and really this nice workflow where literally on the unit you can do the capture, push the PCAP up, and then have it in Wireshark in a matter of seconds. So files, that's analysis is where you have where you've got snapshots, either discovery snapshots or Wi-Fi snapshots or path analysis, and then survey, which is where I've got my all my surveys, and then managing your floor plans and being able to Link Live, you can put the floor plan, do the calibration, and then basically say, hey, I want to push it down to these particular units, right? So this really lets you, this is sort of the, what we've really seen, I think, even pre-COVID, but accelerated by COVID, is the expert is never where the problem is, right? And so we've put a lot of energy into making it that anything you can do on the unit in your hands, you can do remotely. And I would add that very easy to do, right? Since we've got 4 connectivity options coming out of the product, right? You've got two wired Ethernet ports, and you've got 2 radios. You can easily basically ship the unit into a site. Any admin could just set it up and let it run, and then you can come in and remote into it. So let me see if I've got somebody available here on remote, which I don't. Let's see here. Well, sorry, Dan, wasn't set up for that one.
You could switch to, do you have the Studio 2020 work in your list of orgs?
I probably do. Hang on, not quite sure why I'm not. Anyway,
that's okay.
Yeah.
If you want, I can show it pretty quickly.
Yeah, I can maybe do it on a, let's see if I get it on a demo unit. Here we go. Yeah, here's another unit, different stack. So here's all my different units right here, and I can tag them and name them and label them, organize them any way I want. You can say whenever a result comes up, I also want it emailed to me or anybody else, right? There's a Fleetmatics feature here where you can say any auto test that's run, I want the email coming. You can just kind of watch your people and what they're testing through the day. I only want to see errors or errors and warnings and things like that. But basically, I can come in and remote in to the unit here. And let me actually flip that over and let's see, remote in. So the interesting thing about the remote is it is through sort of a double map traversal. So it will, so I'm here, I could go into my, I could go into a unit office, right? But basically the connectivity time there was we have to wait for the unit to heartbeat out to us. So I can come in here and basically, look at my Wi-Fi and do all, same stuff I was sort of doing before through VNC, which is the other remote option, right? So if you're in band or within the same network and have access, a lot of folks use VNC, or you can, even over a VPN, you could use it, right? But I can come in here and take my BSS IDs and then do all the sorting, etc., filtering, whatever I want to do, and then I can upload to Link Live, for example, and let me put a comment in here, demo, for example, and then let me save to analysis files. Oops. Let me do it one more time there. I don't think I quite hit that right. Sorry. Upload to Link Live. And let me just save to analysis files. And then if I were over here in Link Live, I can now come into, and close out of here, come into analysis. And one of the nice things about Link Live is you can have multiple tabs open into the same site here. And so you can see that snapshot that I just pushed is coming up. And so now I can take a look at it and say, hey, I want to do analysis. And here you can see, in fact, here you can see the 6 gig stuff showing up there, what SSIDs are running there. I'm running these particular SSIDs, all the slicing and dicing. Here's the same BSSIDs and capabilities to filter or sort on anything you want. Free string search. What's running this particular Mac, right? Or this particular manufacturer prefix. So just and then of course all that. So it just gives you a sense of how easy it is to take the unit remotely. And the nice thing about the remote is it's asymmetrical. You could be, so there's kind of 3 scenarios here. One is you airdrop the unit in, and then person, all they got to do is connect you to their guest Wi-Fi. Boom, you're connected to it through Link Live. You're sitting there, looking at everything going on at the site. So that's model one. The next is you've got somebody new there and you're trying to train them. And so since you can be watching the unit, whatever you do on the unit locally, you can see on the unit on the screen here, you can watch what they're doing and kind of look over their shoulder. And then the third is you could instruct. You can drive it from Link Live, but they're seeing it on the local screen. And so a lot of flexibility there, a lot of ability to, and since we have 2 radios, the test radio can be scanning while the connectivity radio can be running the management plane. So you don't have to be tethered to do these sorts of operations. So just a ton of remote capability to help you deal with especially these new deployments across large regions.
Excellent. That's awesome. Thank you, James, for showing that. We've gone well over our allotted time. I think we've got through some great questions and answers. We are going to be sending out a link to the recording of this webinar. So if you would like to rewatch it or share it with some of your colleagues, you will be able to do that for sure. And also, since there have been so many great questions, one of the things we will develop is an FAQ. So we'll take some of this information that we have here today and create that and also make that available to our webinar registrants. With that, we're going to call it a day. More information, of course, is available at the NetAlly website. Just go to netally.com. There's plenty of links there on the home page for you to explore. I did post in the questions box the link to the upgrade offer, so you could grab that real quick before we close off the webinar. Julio and James, any last minute thoughts?
No, we're just, glad to get this thing across the line. We have a strong roadmap and follow-up. As you might imagine, there's a fair amount of we've been just busy on this, just a lot of new complexities, especially in the certification space. The efforts that went into the certification on this product to be able to ship it worldwide are astronomical. And so, but we're looking forward to, I saw in some of the questions, a lot of that stuff's on the roadmap. Now that we sort of have this big piece of work behind us, we're really looking forward to continuing to improve and enhance, and we got a lot of roadmap features we want to add, many of which were asked in the Q&A section. So, but I want to thank everybody for attending, and we look forward to talking to you in the future.
Thanks, James. Thanks, Julio. Anything else, Julio?
Nope. Just want to thank everyone for joining us today. I hope you are as excited as we are about this new product. And hey, if you have any other questions later, as Dan mentioned, feel free to contact us anytime. And for those questions that we were not able to answer today, and we'll be getting back to you. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.